an honor to be here with you this morning. There's a lot to discuss, and so I'm just going to tell you a story today. There's some pieces to it. I'm going to use this whiteboard. I'm going to borrow from my college professor days to just kind of help keep track of some of the things I'm going to share. It's actually probably more for me than it is for you. But first, I want to tell you a quick anecdote, which is funny because it happened just out here on the interstate a few months ago. So our Secretary of Transportation, Greg Thomas, was coming back from a meeting. And he was talking with his wife, Luann. And this is a true story, by the way. And so he's going along, and he's in his state vehicle that he drives around. And he was talking to Luann, all of a sudden, boom, and he went, "Luann, I think I've just been hit." And sure enough, this guy, as he went around him, as he got over, just bumped the side of his car. So they pull over, and this guy comes out, and he's like, "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hit you. We don't need to call the police. It's okay. We don't need to call the police and stuff." And the secretary said, "Well, I think we better just in case, let's have an officer come out." No, it's fine. I'll take care of it. I'll pay for it, whatever." And so they're waiting, and this other guy's kind of going nuts and freaking out. And some of this has happened to you and to me, because we know what this scenario is like. And anyway, so the officer gets there, and he says, "Okay, so what happened?" And the other guy goes, "This guy right here hit me. He was in a state vehicle, and he hit my car." And blah, blah, blah. And so Greg's standing there like this. And the officer turned and said, "And sir, what do you do?" And he went, "I'm the Secretary of Transportation." And the officer went, "That's all I need." And that was it. So anyway, well, some of the things that we deal with in transportation are not quite what we might have expected when Governor Bevin asked us to serve in these roles. So I started on the first day of the Bevin administration serving in this position. And I'd been there before, as you all heard, under Governor Fletcher as a legislative liaison. So about 9 years had passed since I'd been in my cabinet. And when I walked in on December 9th, 2015, I really didn't know what kind of situation I was walking into in terms of just the dire challenges that we were facing as a state in terms of transportation. On February 25th, we had a meeting of our lead team. And this was kind of a transitional team. It's not all like new, Bevin people yet. And Secretary Thomas just asked a very simple question. He said, "Hey, how much money are we going to be spending between now, their February 25th and June 30th, the end of the fiscal year, on our state projects?" And the answer was, "We're going to spend $162 million. Okay? And then the meeting started to go on, and he said, hold on, wait a minute. But how much are we projected to bring in?" And nobody knew, which should have been a warning to us. And a few minutes later, our budget director kind of looked at us a little bit, with the blood draining out of her face. She said, "Well, we're projected to bring in $80 million. And Greg looked at me, and I went, and they were spending double what they were bringing in. And all of us in here know that every month we have to balance our checkbooks, right? We go to our dining room table or our desk or whatever, and we have to make it work. And that's one of the reasons why the road fund has been plummeting in terms of how much money it has in its reserves. Also, as you all know, especially for our local officials here, they kept spending at the same level even though the gas tax has dropped 6.5 cents per gallon. And my friends, every cent on the gas tax is $32 million. About half of it is revenue shared with our counties and our cities, and the other half goes into the road fund for the transportation cabinet to spend on state projects. So that was like pulling a thread. And we began to find out the story and just a little bit about where we were. And it was pretty dire. So we had to do something that responsible leaders have to do. But that's not very popular. We had to put a brake on all of the projects that we had going. And being a historian, I'm a real believer that good leaders, before they make a change, just try to figure out how did we get here, right? Like just wisdom. All right, how do we get here? And then let's think on how we go forward. And that's kind of why you study history, right? So you don't repeat it and the mistakes of it. So we began looking at that, and that's when we came up with the Pause 50 plan, which a lot of you have heard about, where we had to pause all of our projects that were in the right-of-way and utility phases that we thought, hadn't gone along too far to the point where people where we'd had to buy their homes or land from them or whatever, it wasn't as inconvenient to pause. So we paused $145 million in that. So that was 145 right here. And then we did what I call checking the phone booth method, which millennials wouldn't understand that analogy. We went and looked in every account that we have for extra dollars that had not been spent on projects. And thankfully for us, we found almost $100 million sitting in all these different accounts. So that's now $245 million. And then Governor Bevin told us in his first State of the Commonwealth address to drive more. We did. And so last summer, we ended up bringing in $30 million extra dollars beyond what the consensus forecasting group had told us we would get. So I wasn't a math major. But as you can see, so we basically captured about $275 million. Why am I telling you this? Because our budget model showed us that in the second week of August, which is the week after we send 60% of all the revenue shared funds out to you, to the counties and municipalities, that we were going to go broke. Now, I don't mean we were going to go under the $100 million that we're required to have in our bank account in the road fund. I'm talking about the check bounced. And of course, because a lot of times new administrations come in and they kind of do like the British are coming, right, type thing. Like, the sky is falling, we're stopping projects. We were working against kind of a boy cried wolf scenario where we had a lot of skepticism. Like, yeah, but we've heard this from Fletcher, from Bashir, from Patton. Why should we believe you? Well, here's the thing, you all. When we got to the second week of August, in the low day in that month, we get all of our tax revenue at the end of the month. So as we spend all month, the road fund goes like this, and then all of a sudden we get the infusion, just like a lot of us get paid once a month. Would you like to know how much we had on Tuesday of that week? We had $110 million. Kentucky was going to go broke in the road fund. And the thing is, think about that story. We always want, Kentucky to be in the news for good things, right? But can you imagine it if we had to stop active projects where bulldozers are turned off and, like construction workers are having to come off the job because we can't pay you as a state. That's where we were headed. So Pause 50 was meant to get us through the low day. And as you heard, we had $110 million and we made it. So we made it through our first crisis, but now the greater problem where we are today, and that's why I'm sharing this story with you all, is we have a long-term fiscal unsustainability in the road fund. And Governor Bevin has tasked us to look at ways forward, like what can we do to meet all the needs that we have. And that's why we've introduced a prioritization model called SHIFT. This is the Strategic Highway Investment Formula for Tomorrow. And people ask me, like, well, why do you use a formula? And I say, well, because without the F, the acronym would be a curse word. We're trying to bring what I call being on par. We want the cabinet wants to be on par with our partners. And these are things that we've struggled with as an organization in the past. We want to be on par with you, which is predictable, so that you know what we're doing and you can plan accordingly. We want to be accountable for our dollars, how we behave as servants of the state and working with our taxpayer money. And then finally, we want to be responsive. So that when you call us and say, look, I know that this intersection needs to be redone and that's important, but this one over here, we have this a factory that wants to come in, and if you could do a change here, they would come, that kind of thing. So we want to be on par, predictable, accountable, and responsive, which is something that we've wrestled with in the past. I'm blessed to work with a lot of brilliant engineers, and a lot of the men and women you all in my cabinet, they could make a lot more money in other places, but they love our mission. And so we've been working on bringing a healthier culture, one that I believe is more honoring and empowering, just treating one another with respect, and actually bringing this now, as we treat each other better, and try to bring that into the workplace, now do the same with you as we partner with you in both the public sector and the private sector. All right, so how are we going to be on par? Well, let me throw one more stat for you to see. And this is the one that I'd ask you to remember the most if you remember something from today, because this really does define where we are. So the 6-year road plan is our planning document. The legislature, the governor writes one, and then we send it to the General Assembly, and then they make their changes, and then it becomes law, and that's our plan for the next 6 years. Right now, if you look at state projects in there, over the next 6 years, there's $6.5 billion of projects, like these state-funded projects. How much money will we be receiving to do these $6.5 billion in the next 6 years? $360 million. 5% funding for 100% of projects. That's how much money we have on the state side. Now, let me just give you a quick footnote, and I'm a historian, we do footnotes. There are $700 million we receive in federal funds every year. And unfortunately, because the road plan has been so over-programmed, our legislators actually refer to federal dollars as good money. And that's embarrassing to me, that we're at the point where, was this good money? I mean, we're professionals, we're leaders. We shouldn't have to talk about, hey, is this real money or not? So we have $700 million a year that we use for federal projects, but this is just those projects that we have in that have, if any of you know our road plan, it has SPP or SP next to it, state project or state priority project. 5% of funds in the next 6 years for 100% of these projects. And you wonder why folks get frustrated with us. And I understand. So this is what we inherited. And so we are working to have a way forward. And you all, the only way that we know how to do this is either keep doing it the way we've done it before, which is where you have to cash in all of your favors to hopefully get that project and maybe get something out of that 5%, or we can have a data-driven process that is predictable and accountable and responsive. And that's what SHIFT is. So SHIFT is a formula with 2 tiers. There's an upper tier for statewide projects, and it uses 5 areas. 25% of the formula, you get points for, is this a safety-related project? There are 3 areas that get 20%. Congestion, right, trying to help get the traffic moving. Asset management, which we call like fix it first. And economic development. Will this bring jobs into this area if we build this here? And then finally, 15% for what we call cost-benefit analysis. If it's $100 million for 10 miles versus $100 million for 50 miles, well, guess which one's going to score better? The 50 miles. Being a mountainous state, and for a third of our state, that's why we bring that into it, because sometimes, if you're building a mile in Perry County, it's way more expensive than here in Oldham, or where I'm from in Taylor County. So that's the upper tier. That project, then those projects will get scored, and then they're ranked. And what's great is our MPOs and our local districts sponsor projects and send them up to us to be scored. And that's how we know from you, hey, Asa, look, we know you don't have tons of funding, but here are 12 projects that we have decided as a locale that are most important for our area. So then we score that, and now they're ranked. And guess what happens? Okay, this is my favorite part of this whole thing, because this is where I really think it's a sea change for us. So now let's say that we've scored under SHIFT 100 projects, right? By the way, how are we doing? You with me? Okay, good. Just checking, because this is a lot, I know. So everything's scored on here. Well, what I can tell you is with the scoring system, because we know how much these projects cost, that in 2018, with the gas tax at 26 cents and our fees, for like motor vehicle licensing and stuff like that, where they are today, let's say hypothetically that I can say we can do the first 20 of these. All right, so that's at 26 cents. And then the rest of the fees that we get for the road fund. Well, look what Shift does. Now, our legislators can play with revenue, whether they want to increase it or move it around or whatever. There is an actual cause and effect that they've never had before. So if the General Assembly said, hey, so we're going to go back to 32.5, which is where we were before the gas tax dropped. There's a formula, you all probably know about it. It's from 1984 that the legislature put in, but it's a formula that the gas tax rises and falls with the price of gas, the wholesale price. So let's say that the legislature gave us 6.5 cents more. We go back to where we were. Well, look, now I can do 10 more projects. And the reason why that matters is, as you know, a lot of times, I've run for office myself. My wife is our state treasurer. When you're in elected office, it's easy to be very risk averse. And so when you go back and, people getting mad at you, I don't want the gas tax raised. Why are you doing that? Why are you for that? Well, let's say that the widening of I-71 out to the Crestwood exit is number 25. Then now, as if I were your state rep, I can say, if they're like, hey, so why did you support that gas tax increase? I can say, well, why are you opposed to the widening? See, there's a cause and effect that we haven't had before. Again, we're now predictable and responsive to you all. Something, that I've gotten to speak several times. The judge has heard me give this talk a few times now, but he's grading me on it right now. But the biggest applause I ever heard in talking about this was at a judges and magistrates conference several months ago. And I asked them, I said, wouldn't you love to know that if the road plan said it'll go to construction in August of 2018, it will go to construction in August of 2018? And there was this I had to wait, because we have not been on par. So that's something that's where we're trying to get to. And let me throw out, I am a conservative. So I'm not a big fan. I agree with Ronald Reagan that if you want less of something, you tax it. So I get actually a little uncomfortable talking about, like raising the gas tax or fees, for, some of the user fees that we charge as a cabinet. But here's the thing. In transportation, there are only 4 ways to pay for something. A public-private partnership, P3, taxes, grants from the federal government, or finally, tolls. That's it. We're not a business. We don't sell things that then we can go build bridges with. So there are 4 ways that we as a society have to decide, how we're going to pay for our infrastructure. And with 5% for the 100, we cannot stay where we are right now. So you all, let me show you just another thing about this. For those of you who are more like me, who this makes you uncomfortable. The road fund got up to $800 million several years ago. Gas tax was 32.5. The cabinet couldn't spend it fast enough. And so guess what? The general fund from the Great Recession was going down, while the road fund is just getting bigger and bigger. So the General Assembly began going into the road fund for things that were related to transportation, kind of, but really weren't roads and bridges. Now I know this. The best example of this is on the second day of her serving as our treasurer, my wife called me from work. And Allison said, Asa, I just saw that I get $250,000 out of the road fund every year. And I said, what? Like the treasury gets $250,000? And I said, is that for like some service you provide? Like, the checks to the treasury? She said, no, it's just a direct appropriation for the running of my office. And I went, well, can I have it back? And you all, there are fingers and hands in the road fund all over, and to the tune of $143 million annually. Look at that. $143 million every year flows out from the road fund into the general. Before we even talk about a higher gas tax, we need to start moving this $143 million back in. Now, just to give you an example of what that is, like about $80 million goes to state police. $13 million goes to commercial vehicle enforcement. $250,000 goes to the state treasurer. You know, there's all these things. Of that $143 million, about 35 of it is our cabinet paying other cabinets for services, like we paid the finance cabinet $5 million to be in our own building. I'm not a big fan of that one because we built it with road fund money. But yeah, but anyway, so there's those kind of things. But there's $108 million here that's a direct outflow from the road fund to things that are not bridges, roads, multimodal things like bike paths or going to our river ports or our railways. So that right there, you all, is an interesting number, because my last thing I want to throw out, and then I'd love to take some questions. And here's the thing. Having been a professor for 8 years, teaching millennials, I can handle any question. Believe me. Okay. All right. Oh, I know. The millennials are like, oh, no. Okay. So that $143 million, you all, is an interesting number because of this last piece of the story I haven't told you yet. And I joke with people that if I'd known all this when I interviewed with the transition team, I would have been like, I think I'll stay in academia. My third week, so at the end of December, there, just before the new year in 2015, the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, sent 2 bureaucrats down from DC. And they came to tell us just about the worst news that we could get in the midst of this. You know how, you'll remember how the parkways used to be tolled? You know, like I'm from Campbellsville, so I was always on the Cumberland Parkway. And so, we paid tolls. And so here's what happened. In the mid-90s, under President Clinton and the Republican Congress, they decided that states like Kentucky that built a parkway, which is almost on the level quality-wise as an interstate, that they would reimburse us for all the tolls that we got through what they call toll credits. Now, a toll credit is kind of like Bitcoin. Like, it's not a real dollar in your hand, but you can spend it. And a lot of you know, because you've worked with the federal government, is they always require a match, right? So that's $700 million a year that we get in federal funds. Guess what we have to match that with? 20%. Well, look at this number. There's about $140 million a year that we as Kentuckians spend to draw that $700 million down into Kentucky. And they came to tell us that the $650 million in toll credits that we had saved up, at one point we had a couple billion, but we spend, though, our team has been really good over the years about if we could spend a toll credit on it, we would, to free up a real dollar, to go to something where only real dollars could go there. That $650 million was being taken away, all of it. And basically in an hour we lost $650 million because there had been an accounting error. And they had not been figured correctly. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is why I'm just sharing with you all, it's kind of been like the fiscal perfect storm. What I call bad news with a smile, right? In what we've been dealing with on the state level at KYTC. And so, we've lost this. And we're trying to figure out now, like, how to just even get back to where we were. And if the General Assembly began to move this back, and they don't have to do it all at once, they still have to pay for that $143 million on the general fund side, but the general fund until this past month has been going up, and the road fund has been going down. So that would help make up for the loss of toll credits, and that would be one of these 3 pieces that's played in this fiscal storm that we could solve. And then maybe we could think about other ways, whether it's the gas tax or it's some of the fees. We have fees in our cabinet that are from the 1960s. And so they haven't been updated. And what I love about fees is if you use it, you pay it, right? So it's a user fee. It's more fair versus just, hey, 10 more cents on the gas tax to do the Mountain Parkway, and the Brent Spence Bridge. And people who don't live anywhere near those are like, why should I pay 10 cents for something not near me, right? So anyway, well, that's a little bit about where we've been. We're rolling out SHIFT this month. And the secretary and our state highway engineer, Patty Dunaway, and I kind of have a running joke that we're going to, we're wondering how the scores are going to come out, because we're hoping that they come out like this, where you have the projects like, Jefferson, Taylor, Oldham, Fayette, Boyd, Pike. It's not like Jefferson, 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 Fayette, Fayette, Fayette. Because as you know, we have we're always trying to, deal with that urban-rural dynamic. And that's why, I didn't tell you about the second tier of the formula. So anything that doesn't score well on the state level then has a second chance down on the regional level. And this time, the formula is 70% data and 30% of a boost, which you all will get to do. Like our districts will get 15% where they can put points towards it, and the other 15% will come from our MPOs and ad districts. And like our local leaders saying, hey, we want to give 5 points to this one because it should have scored better. It's more important than the model is showing. And that's one way we're helping make sure that the triangle does well, but also doesn't take up all the money, from areas, like Adair County and Taylor, where I'm from, or, just making sure there's equity and fairness throughout that SHIFT model. Okay, I think, last thought. We're like you, we're trying to work this out as leaders and do the best we can. And Governor Bevan's always telling us to do the right thing. For too long, people thought that if it was in the road plan, it was funded. And we're just trying to tell people, just because it's in there doesn't mean that it's been funded. It's just on a piece of paper with no money, real money attached to it. And what we want to do, and Governor Bevan's goal, is to present a balanced plan that is on par. So with that, I would love to answer any questions that you all have. And let me throw this out. All I would ask is, if these are about very specific projects, if we could wait till afterwards. I could probably do some bigger ones. I have Matt here. But if it's about the intersection of here, there, and here, I'm probably not going to know the answer to that. But I would love to know, some feedback or thoughts you have, or yes?
I've got a question with the formula.
Right.
It sounds like this would really benefit us because Louisville is the driver of the state.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned safety, I would think since we've got the most population, we would qualify for safety, number one, congestion, number one, economic growth opportunities, number one. So I'm playing devil's advocate here. So how's the money going to be? It's going to be spread evenly, or is Louisville going to see a
Sure.
bigger chunk because we are
Right.
the drivers?
So we've got the two tiers, and Oldham will do very well in actually both tiers, but the statewide tier, the Louisville metro area,
Yeah.
is going to do very well. That's why there's that lower tier, and then now 4 regions, and then there will be a set number of dollars, the same amount per region.
So each region's going to get
Correct.
a set amount of money.
On the lower tier, but then there'll be, and that whether it's however that we don't know what that number is going to be yet, because we're still kind of tweaking this. But yeah, there will be a set amount for the statewide projects, which the urban areas will do better in. They just will score better.
Right.
And then there'll be a set amount for the regional, and then now everybody can try to have a second shot at it. We're basing this, by the way, on North Carolina's model. The Secretary and I have been to 4 states. 15 states are already doing this. We're not reinventing the wheel here. And as a historian, I'm a big fan of that. So we've gone to them and said, hey, how did this work for you? And it's interesting because in North Carolina, the legislature had to give up some power to this model. And what's cool is they're now their biggest advocates, because state representatives and state senators can come back and say it'll be done in October of 2019 with certainty and confidence. And we don't have that right now. We're just hoping it'll land there. And then the people, outside of Frankfurt, they have no idea either. I mean, I think about, for a lot of you as our local elected leaders, wouldn't it be great just to be able to actually plan, like, you know, thinking down the road, especially when you're growing like you are. So anyway, that's a little bit about like how we're going to address that. Yes, sir.
Hey, so Jim Urban, planning director, and I go to all these meetings to do this prioritization. I think what's important, you know, but for the people in the room to understand is there are different pots of money. So locally in the MPO, we've got money every year that we really kind of control in terms of project development priorities, along with the state projects, which are separated.
Sure.
So the cabinet has a list of their priorities, and then the MPO has a list of its priorities. But we get $17 million to split up among the region for projects that we prioritize on a local basis.
And like I said, these are for like SP, these are for state projects, like in our plan, you know, SPP or P.
Again, just so everybody understands, there's different pots of money. And we have to do a kind of statewide project priority, but also the MPO project priority.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because that if I could do like a PSA to all of Kentucky, ooh, what I say, right? No, but probably the thing I would tell them is what you just said, that, you know, overall the Transportation Cabinet gets about just over $2 billion a year in income, or not income, in funding, but it's not one big pot of money. And you remember you all like how in 2004, 5, 6, like we could not get the Kennedy painted. Remember that? And everybody was like, paint the bridge, you know. And they're like, 17 million, you know. That money was only for bridge painting from the federal government. And you know, so it's a good question. Well, spend that 17 million on a sidewalk in my neighborhood. That's what the federal government gave us that money for, and we have no flexibility. And so that's something where I'm glad you said that. Like, we have all these different pots of money, and then adding to this is where stuff slows down, right? Bureaucratically, there's different rules for how this can be spent and that one, and you know, yeah. Good, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, my question is, who assigns the ratings, and is there a criteria for assigning those numbers?
So we put together a task force within the cabinet of people from like all different areas of the cabinet, just brought their expertise to the table. And then they took North Carolina, Tennessee, and Ohio's models and how they score, like the actual formulas that they use. And the hardest piece is the economic development one. It's funny, I never get asked about the other four, but people, how are you going to score economic development? And well, the good news is, you know, we score GDP, and hey, if you give a tax cut, this many million jobs will be, I mean, there are ways to do that. And so that's what we've done. And that's still, that last piece, the economic development, is still being worked on. That's why we don't know what the scores are going to be yet, because we're waiting. I love this, you all. They've added a connectivity piece within economic development for the rural areas, kind of a if you build it, they will come piece, saying, look, if you connect this to the greater system, there's now a better chance that someone will come in here. Like we just had you all, you might have seen it, this drone port is going to be built in Hazard, like Dukes of Hazzard, you know, like, and it's awesome. But part of why they came is what we've done to connect Hazard to I-75 over off the Parkway. So yeah, good. What else? Yes, sir.
The gas tax, 26 cents. How does that compare to other states, and maybe specifically to the models that you guys are trying to emulate?
Sure. Well, we're a little low now. Tennessee just this year raised theirs 10 cents, and Indiana raised theirs 7 cents, I think about a month ago. So, you know.
Where are they in total then?
What is theirs? I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head, but I do know that because of that, I think we're the lowest except for West Virginia. I'd have to double check that. So while gas is cheap, you know, at $2.19, $2.13, you know, I think that's what I paid yesterday. If we go back to 32.5, one possibility of that is that's just going to where we were. So then you can argue, is that a tax increase or not? It's where we were before, so, you know, but that would be, this right here would, if we went back here, that would be almost 100 million more for local governments and 100 million more for the road fund in Frankfurt for KYTC. Yes, sir.
Two-part question. First one, on the gas tax, you know, when you say 6.5 cents, when you look at the, what do you got, the 26?
Yeah.
And then you go to, and you say, well, if we had 6.5 more, well, how do you do the math? That's a certain percentage increase. I was playing with my calculator when you were saying that, and I said, well, if you look at how many gallons you put in your tank every week, and I put about 20 gallons in there, so it's negligible. You know,
Mhm.
It's about $50 a year. So would I pay $50 a year to get my project to go from 20 to 25? Probably so.
Hmm.
I think that's an easier sell.
Mhm,
You
sure.
break it down to the most common denominator, that's what you paint at the pump and say, what am I getting for these gallons? I think that might be an easier way, but with y'all's forward thinking, you said that the legislators in the other states have given up some power.
Mhm.
Who are they giving it up to? Have we just moved the political ball from the legislative branch to the executive branch?
Right.
And that's the first question. The second
Okay.
question is, your fuel, what about when the gasoline, and it's not gonna happen in my lifetime probably, but certainly in yours, when we get away from gasoline-driven cars or vehicles?
Well, with the first question, it does move it to the executive branch, but what they've done in North Carolina is the body they've created is an intergovernmental agency, committee, and somebody's got to pick right now. For too long, I mean, you know this, but it's been backroom deals and favors. I mean, let's be candid here. That's how it's been decided. That's how you make this square peg fit in this round hole, and it really doesn't fit. So, and by bringing in like this team, what's great about the formulas is they should be predictable. Like you all will know. Oh, okay, we can look and seeing how they do that. All right, so your second question, that's really a good one because we almost need like a futurist here for that. Because automated vehicles isn't even the newest thing anymore. It's flying vehicles. I mean, the Jetsons are here. Mr. Spacely is going to be yelling at all of us. They have this, is it Dubai that had the one-man flying drone? Did you see that? So it's funny, we were talking about the Brent Spence Bridge, which really is one of the most challenging dilemmas I have ever seen. I just don't know that it could be more complicated. I really don't. Just when I thought I got a kind of handle on it, our 3 county judges from up there brought a topographical map, and I hadn't even thought about the terrain, and they were showing us how steep all the land around is. I thought, great. So anyway, I jokingly said, well, why don't we just wait till we're flying in our cars? And actually, the more I think about it, I'm like, that might not be the worst idea when we're about to spend $2.6 billion on a bridge that 15 years from now possibly might not need it. So anyway, anyway, that's a good point. Like what you're raising about the legislature. I've actually talked to now several people in those different states, and they love, like basically your younger, newer legislators. They can advocate, but they don't have to sell their souls anymore to get something. And I say accountable, but I really mean transparent, right? Like everybody knows how we're deciding and how things will get scored. And here's the thing, you all, this is kind of the little secret. We're doing this. We would love for the General Assembly, once it's ready, to put it into statute. But we're going to do this. And we're going to see how it's going to go because there's 2 ways, and the previous way got us here, and this is the best we've come up with. But what I share with people is, we'll tweak things. If it doesn't work, we'll fix it. We'll try it, and then if we'll try. If it doesn't work, we'll try something new. Or, if the economic development piece ends up being a disaster, well, then we'll go to a different company that scores this kind of thing. So thank you. Good questions. What else, you all?
I got one more. What about the formula of the fifth? Where's that going?
Well, I tell you,
Most people don't know what that is, but like an official knows.
we're not touching it.
You're not?
That's kind of an insider baseball thing that I really would encourage our local elected leaders to. I know that KLC is pushing this more than KCO, but I would encourage you all to. It doesn't. I would just encourage you to find a way to talk about this, because all the infighting has led us in part to where we are now. And I know it's frustrating because, county leaders are trying to, you all are being given 5 to 10% for 100% of problems to fix. And then our municipal leaders, right, the cities, they're doing the same thing. And the thing is, it's so bad. I would encourage us to unite around this problem and address it. And very, again, candidly, our legislature is dominated by, if there was a rural caucus in an urban, the rural caucus is bigger. So that's not going to change without some just, level-headed discussion. And I would tell you, I know I'm on camera right now. But this is just Asa talking. Governor Bevin hasn't talked about this, Secretary Thomas, but right now it's 51.2 cents in the revenue sharing that goes to us beef, and you get 51.8, and you all get the 40. No, that's right. 51.2, and then you all get the 48.8. Yeah, before it gets to the formula fifths. I'm open to raising that a little bit for you all, like going down a little bit on the state side, like 51.49 or 50.50. If that would be a piece that I could bring to the table to help, get us where we. I get this divide as well as the rural-urban divide makes me nervous.
If you did that, you would have three groups: the cities, the counties, and the state working as one unified group. Because nobody wants to give up anything, but since you all have the biggest part of the time,
right.
The cities and the counties will say, why do we have to fight amongst us?
Sure. When
you got the big stick.
Sure.
No, I would encourage that.
And most states don't do a revenue sharing like we do. It's funny, that's something where when we told them that about half of every penny goes to our local governments, these other states, they couldn't believe it because the legislature gives it. So we're already blessed to have the structure that we have. But you're right, that's a toughie. That's another, I can come back for another week. Does someone over here have? Yes, yes, sir.
I'm really glad to see the data-driven, formula-driven approach that Transportation Cabinet is taking to this. But there's a larger question, and every state faces it, and that is, what is the prioritization of road needs as against a myriad of other needs, education, health, poverty, on and on and on. For example, you talk about North Carolina. North Carolina is in desperate condition with regard to its funding of public education, while it may be doing just fine with roads. So every state faces that. But here in Kentucky, we have an 800-pound gorilla that is saying everything has to stop and wait until we solve this problem, and that's the funding of pensions. How do you compete against that?
That's a great question. Well, one thing that helps us is constitutionally, and you're probably aware of this, some of you might not know, there are 2 bank accounts in state government. And everything in state government is funded out of the general fund, except for transportation. And we have the road fund. So that helps right away. Some of that turf war goes away because there are taxes and fees that only feed into the road fund. So we're actually not competing with education dollars or pension dollars in that regard. We have a little bit of the general fund that pays for our employees, like our health care and stuff. But the vast, it's like 98, 97% is its own dedicated source, which was smart. Like, the founders of Kentucky, I don't know that they foresaw where we are today, but they had the insight, foresight enough to have 2 accounts so that we don't have to compete with these other areas. That's really, that issue is so hard and almost like soul crushing. Like, how do we do this? You have promises that we've made on one side. We have people like my grandmother that lives on a fixed income and has planned for that amount. And then we have leaders who for decades have knowingly overpromised. Knowing they couldn't pay for it. It's unbelievable. And so when we came in, you all know, no person runs for office and first thing, we're cutting education. But when 90% of your budget is either Medicaid and healthcare or education, and you have to balance the budget, and if you want to have extra down the road, you have to cut somewhere. Well, if you cut in Medicaid, people literally die. So where did we go? like Governor Bevan and his team went and looked at education and basically saying, look, if we cut back now, balance it now, and then as we grow as a state, we'll have more money, we can begin to put stuff back in. We're preparing our piece for the special session in the fall, which is probably, pretty sure we're going to do that. That, what you just said, will be the number one thing people will be talking about, is pensions and tax reform. The only way we know how to really, without having draconian cuts to like benefits and things like that, is to grow the economy, right? More tax revenue coming in. As well as new workers, we're going to have to pare down what they get. But this discussion will probably be the second biggest piece, is how are we going to make the road fund fiscally sustainable to meet our needs? You all, we went through, and we're actually still working on this number. Matt knows about this. But we have billions of dollars outside of this number of just congestion and safety needs in this state. Like in the next 10 years, what we're looking at, we know like this interstate's going to need to be rehabbed, and this bridge is, we have all these structurally deficient bridges. It's in the billions. And so we've been trying to figure out how much more do we need. And it's a big number. And that's not even getting to economic development. When you call and say Rawlings wants to do this, I want to be able to say, hey, you know what, we can help you with this piece, instead of, sorry, we're just trying to get this bridge open again so school buses can go across it. But we've been having to say that to you because 5%. So anyway, that's a little bit of the broader answer. I'm interested to see where it's going to go. But what we're trying to do is raise awareness, so with leaders like you, and also partnering with our legislators. You all, I know, I really mean this. I hope you can hear the sincerity in my heart, but I don't know that I would pick anybody else in the state Senate other than Ernie Harris to lead, right? Our Transportation Committee. Having Senator Harris he gets it, he knows this. And he's tried to address this problem while he's been there. And I just love it because you all are blessed to have a great spokesman in Senator Harris, and I'm blessed to have him as our chairman because he knows, and he knows that we're going to have to make some hard decisions. But you all can help us by telling people. Just let them know this is what's really going on. We're trying, it's our money as taxpayers. We're trying to use it as though it were our own and do it in a way that really is on par and is responsible with it. Well, good. Any other thoughts or questions? Thank you very much.